Welcome back to the God's Vibes podcast. We've got a special announcement today. You all, as podcast listeners, have an opportunity to enroll in the God's Vibes Mastermind. We officially closed enrollment, but for listeners, it's still open, so you better hear me out. If you didn't know, the God's Vibes Mastermind is actually one of our flagship programs inside Courage Co. And Courage Co is a training hub located in a private app, so you don't have to be distracted by social media or anything else. You can just go to this space and develop your spiritual life, which is the foundation of the rest of your life. Every problem that we have has a spiritual source. It has a spiritual root. And if we are not getting activated spiritually and growing and maturing in Christ, we are not prepared to handle the different challenges and the tests and the trials that come from just being on the planet. So I highly recommend getting plugged into the God's Vibes Mastermind. This program is inner healing. This is activating your identity in Christ. This is unleashing your purpose, because when you don't have a relationship with God, you don't know who you are. And then you don't know the good plans that he's connected to your life, how you're wired, how he's uniquely formed, shaped, and anointed you for such times as this, the purposes and plans that he has for you specifically. And then we get in trouble trying to imitate other people and follow different ways of the world. And we're not supposed to be conformed to the patterns of the world, and it can get tricky. So the mastermind is developed into 4 different modules, and it's designed to help you grow in your relationship with Christ, get activated in your identity, because your identity is one of the most powerful forces in the universe, and it's from which all of your purpose flows, okay? And then you can unleash your influence, you can get activated in maximizing your impact, but it truly is Holy Spirit boot camp is kind of what it's been termed. There's a beautiful sacred family there. It's been coined the GVM fam. That's not what I called it, but it's just such an honor that it would be given that title, because it truly is a beautiful community where you are welcomed, where you are championed, where you're supported, where you're covered, where you're prayed for. And that's just what people do. There's not competition, there's not gossip, there's not backbiting, there's not slander, there's not strife and division. This is literally very, very different. So not only do you have 4 training modules, you also have a ton of bonuses. We will send you the declaration deck. You also get access to the God's Vibes Matter devotional. There are 2 bonus courses in the program. You get self-coaching prompts, you get journal prompts, you get guided meditations and visualizations, and you get live coaching every single week for an entire year. Now, this is designed to be a 3-month program. You could technically move at that pace, but you get access to it for an entire year. So I like to think about it this way. Imagine if you just gave God a year of your life. Everything changes. I tried it. So I encourage you to do that. This is the last chance for you to get plugged in. Again, we closed enrollment publicly, but for those listeners, you can still get plugged in. It is currently 33% off. If you didn't know, we do have a payment plan. So you can either pay in full or you can use the payment plan. Okay. So if you didn't know that, click the link in the show notes. If you have any questions at all, do not hesitate. If you are hearing this and you're like, yeah, email info@julianapage.com. We will get you plugged in. Okay. So this is your last chance. You have until midnight to claim this opportunity to be a part of the God's Vibes Mastermind. And our first call with you all will be Thursdays at 9 a.m. Central Time, and these are recorded. So when work and when life happens and all those things, you still can get access to those calls, okay? So it's time to run with us, all right? This is the last chance for you to enroll in the God's Vibes Mastermind. Enrollment closes tonight at midnight. Not sure when we're opening that again, so make sure that you get plugged in, okay? There are enrollment options. You can pay in full, or we do have a payment plan. If you have any questions at all about the mastermind and what is in there and how to get plugged in ASAP, email info@julianapage.com. We also sponsor people into this program. We've been known to do that. So if you also want to just sow into somebody else's breakthrough, into their transformation and pay it forward, we absolutely put all of that towards that. So if you want to invest in somebody else's journey, just email us info@julianapage.com. There's actually a link in the show notes where you can sew into somebody else's journey. So you can do that in the link in the show notes or just email us info@julianapage.com. Okay? All right, y'all. Let's dive into some encouragement, shall we? I think we shall. That sounds fun. So, I wanted to share an encouragement about faith, okay? I wanted to share an encouragement about faith because I think sometimes we get these distorted ideas or we put these unfair expectations on ourselves about what our faith should look like. And then the minute we have some doubts, some fears, some insecurities creep in, we think, man, who am I? Right? Oh, ye of little mustard seed size faith. Right? I'm not walking by faith. I'm not walking in a whole lot of courage. I just feel like I don't have any at all, right? Who am I to be walking this faith walk? So sometimes the enemy comes to spew lies and get us full of all these doubts, fears, insecurities, but the light, y'all, is more powerful than the darkness. And I want to remind you what 1 Timothy 4:12 says, don't let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. No matter where you are, no matter what's going on in your life, God doesn't see you in sin. He doesn't see you in your shame or in your guilt. He doesn't see you as, oh, you're so weak and so unqualified. That's the enemy. God sees you like he sees his son, Jesus. He sees you in the righteousness of Christ. And that's the work, is to start living in that, right? Living in the righteousness that we can't perfect ourselves enough to earn, that we just receive. We can't perform enough to receive it. We just receive, and we just receive by believing, okay? You believe and you receive. That's why we are believers, and you have to believe before you can walk by faith, right? So the quality of your faith is actually tested. You know, we might think, oh yeah, I got a whole lot of faith, you know? But let a circumstance come, let a hater come, let an enemy get activated, and then we'll see. How's the quality of your faith? So one reason we go through trials is to test the quality of our faith. And often we find ourselves wishing we had faith as strong as another person, right? Instead of seeing them as a beautiful example of what's possible, we start almost getting jealous or resentful of that person. But I can assure you, truly, if that person has strong and vibrant faith, they did not develop that easily, okay? Just as muscles are built through exercise, firm faith, this unwavering faith, I call it like bulldog faith, comes from the furnace of affliction. Yay. So what we don't realize is when we're praying for great faith, we're praying for a furnace. Yep. We're praying for trials and tests of many kinds. That's actually what we're praying for. We're praying, God, help me be obedient. We're praying for more challenges, more attacks, and actually we're usually being led straight into darkness because that's where you learn obedience. When things aren't going according to your plan or your way, will you still be faithful, right? No one who does anything worthwhile for God has traveled an easy road. It's so easy to look on the outside of somebody's life and then create a whole narrative, okay? Create a whole story about who you think they are, what you think they got going on, how easy you think it is for them. It's really easy to do that. But if we are honest, we have no idea what is actually happening behind the scenes. So examples of this, okay? Many people think that they know Hollywood stars. Why? Because there's these big personas that are very charismatic, okay? And there's a lot of details of their lives that's broadcast all over the internet, right? It used to be in tabloids and magazines. Now it's all over social media. But usually their relationships aren't kept private because paparazzi and people are chasing them down. Any sort of scandal or challenge that they're walking through is usually made public as well. And so not only are they walking through it, but now they have to deal with the public repercussions of that as well. And then sometimes we see them bring emotionally and even through images a person to life, and we relate with that person, right? It captures our emotions and it takes us back. And so we feel like we know these people, yet really, if we're honest, we have no idea who they are. Not really. We don't know what keeps them up at night. We don't know what they wrestle with. We don't know, their secret thoughts. We don't know what weighs heavy on their hearts. We don't know what their desires are. We don't know them. We know what the image and the media is presenting, but we don't actually know them. Another thing, just recently, I was out with some folks for Galentine's, and it was so interesting. I encountered a couple of folks that I hadn't seen for 10 or so years, like literally a decade. So it's so interesting because now, they're married, they have family, they have kids. And so what happened was I had an individual come to me and say, I never knew your story. Like, you always present as put together, as professional, as poised, right? As admirable. I would have never imagined that you would have struggled to that extent, or that would be your story, or that you're able to show up in this way given what you've been through. Like, I would have never known that that's your story. And so my response is, well, you couldn't have known, right? We met in a work environment, so there's so many things that you couldn't have known, and not every environment hears the fullness of your story or knows what you wrestle with, right? Or knows the extent of your trauma or how hard it is to show up every day. And just because somebody shows up powerfully does not mean that they're struggling. Like, it's a choice to do that. Now, I will say some people do that from a place that is fake, okay, and manufactured, but you can do it from a place of wholeness. You can do it from a place of boldness in Christ. You can do it from a place of great faith, okay? But that can be misconstrued or perceived as something that it's not, right? So people might think that, oh, your confidence or the way you communicate, the way you show up is so powerful. I just didn't even think that you struggled or that anything was hard for you. Isn't that interesting? And then people can mistreat you, or they can gossip about you, or they can say the most interesting things because they think somehow you just have it easier because you make it look easy. But that doesn't mean that it's easy at all. So context, my story is actually quite interesting, but isn't all of ours. But really, there is a lot of things that are heavy and painful, and that have lifelong consequences. Very similar to grief, right? Grief doesn't go away, but the degrees of it differ in time, right? And how you are able to walk with grief, right? Versus let it overtake you is different. So the same is true really of trauma. You're marked for life, right? Dysfunction, you're marked for life. The decisions of other people and caretakers mark you for life, right? So I learned at a very early age to be responsible, to show up, right? To really just overcompensate in so many ways. And that became training, right? To show up and to fill in gaps. And I got really, really good at that until I couldn't do that anymore, right? We're not designed to carry other people's burdens and struggles for them. Now we can shift the weight with them, we can help them through, but we're not supposed to carry the full burden of what they're walking through, right? And enable them to not show up or to not take responsibility and that sort of thing. But as a young person, you don't know that. You're just moving off instinct in a lot of ways. So in a particular season, I had an older sister that was really struggling and chose a path of a lot of rebellion. Then I had a younger sister that was an infant, literally, that couldn't care for herself. Really interesting dynamics in the home. A parent that's working literally all the time, and then another one that is really struggling with alcoholism. That is terrifying. It's literally destroying her. So I'm in the middle of all this, and you have to find a way to survive, to fill in the gaps, to care for this younger sister, to, in a lot of ways, protect the older sister, and just keep going to school and keep showing up. And so that was something that was learned as early as 10. Okay, so that can be a great skill in crisis, but it's not a great life strategy. And it can look like faith, is my point. Okay, but fear was often the root of that. So why do I bring this up? I bring this up because we think that somebody in great faith has it easier. But we don't know what it cost them to get to a place where they operate in great faith. Now, for me, I knew that how I was operating at some point, I couldn't keep up, right? There's not enough that you can do to please, to perfect, to fix, to really be a codependent, right? There's not enough that you can do to make things better. It only makes things worse. And then there's a lot of habits that come from that. You don't know how to set boundaries. You don't know how to have healthy relationship dynamics. You never knew those. You never experienced those. You don't know how to care for yourself because nobody cared for you. You don't know how to nurture and support yourself because that's just completely foreign to you. And you don't even think you're worthy of it because you never received it. And so these things playing out in work environments or playing out in relationships or playing out with your mission on the planet don't work very well because you have a victim narrative. You have an unworthiness narrative. You have an insufficiency, lack, poverty mindset narrative directing your life. That will not work for you. And that's not great faith. Okay. So I had to sit in the reality that the quality of my faith was poor. Okay. I had to come face to face with that when I really started walking with the Lord. I started to see, wow, I don't know a life other than surviving and trying to protect myself and find a way. I don't know a life outside of that. And I feel really hurt because I feel uncared for by God. I don't feel like a beloved daughter that's covered and protected. I feel lost. I feel overwhelmed. I feel extremely anxious. I feel like everyone just wants to, take advantage and everyone just wants to use, right? But nobody's here for pure reasons. And that can feel true when you don't know how to care for yourself and you don't know how to qualify value your own. You don't have wisdom. You don't have discernment. Okay. So I really was asking God to help me develop great faith. So no one who does anything worthwhile for God has traveled an easy road, is my point, no matter what it looks like on the outside. Doing great things for God requires character. Okay? And character is developed by passing life's tests and staying faithful to God through trials. And we don't know if we're going to be faithful through trials unless we're in a trial. We don't know. It's so easy to be like, I would never do that, or I would not show up that way. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Right? With this woman that was speaking to me, she's like, man, like I look at my own story and I'm like, what was I doing? Like I came from a great upbringing and I came from, it's not where I'd want to stay or what I would still want to, the town or whatever that I came from isn't where I would like to be. I just aspired to more, but I was rebellious. I did all sorts of crazy things, but I can't even imagine why. I mean, you had it so much harder. Like who was I to be acting out that way? And I'm like, well, it's so easy for you to say that because if you had my same circumstances or conditions, right, maybe you would have showed up better or even similar, or maybe it would have been worse, but you don't know until you're in those circumstances. So it's so hard to say how you would show up unless you're in somebody's shoes. It's so hard to say how you would show up with faith or not until you have a test or a trial. Okay, so doing great things for God requires character, and character is developed. Okay, it's not just a given. It is developed by passing life's tests and staying faithful to God through trials. Okay, wisdom, great faith, discernment. This is like experiential education with the Lord. That's also why the mastermind is so powerful. That's truly what it is. Okay, so to acknowledge God is to care what he thinks and to ask for his opinion. That's really what I had to start doing to walk by faith. Here's an example of faith, okay? A beautiful scripture. We think faith is something that we manufacture, something that we just get better at, something that we affirm our way into. Not so. God gives each of us a measure of faith, and here's how we activate it. Here's how we walk in it. We look to Jesus, okay? It says in Hebrews 12:2, looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of our faith. Who's the author? Jesus. Who is the perfecter? Jesus. Where does great faith come? From Jesus. Okay? The first incentive of our belief and the one who brings our faith to maturity as we walk with Jesus, okay, as we're led to by the Spirit, as we're walking according to the Spirit, who for the joy of accomplishing the goal set before him endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. So as we look to Jesus, as we're led by the Spirit, we're able to walk by faith, okay? We're able to endure these tests and pass these tests and trials, okay? Doing great things for God requires character, and character is developed by passing life's tests and staying faithful to God through trials. We do this with the author and perfecter of our faith. We acknowledge God, right? And we care about what he thinks. And so we're in active dialogue in prayer and conversation with God all of the time. And if you do that on a consistent basis, on a daily basis, you'll find God's guidance and walk in a much closer relationship with him. So the next time you encounter some sort of test or some sort of trial, determine to believe that God will work it out for your good. Pass the test and trust God to promote you to new levels of power and blessing, right? This is what we do. We fix our eyes on Jesus. When we're in a trial, we can focus on the trial, but we can fix our eyes on Jesus. Instead of asking, why are you having a trial? Why? I thought I was doing everything right. I'm laboring. I'm doing all the things, right? And kind of making it about religion and performance, all right? And righteousness, which our righteousness is like filthy rags. Instead of asking, why are you having trials? Ask God to help you have the right response to them. Our responsibility is our ability to respond well to the different tests and trials that we face, and we cannot respond well without God. Why? Because apart from God, we are nothing, and apart from God, we can do no good thing. So the next time you are in a trial, ask God to help you respond to it correctly, okay? Now, the question that I have for you today, the reflection that I have for you today is, can you trust the promise beyond the circumstance? God gives us these precious promises to anchor us, right? They're our hope. They're the anchor for our soul. That's what hope is, right? And God gives us these precious promises that we can run with endurance into these good plans and purposes that he has for us, into what he says is possible. But I want to ask you, have you reached the place in your faith where you believe without a shadow of a doubt that the promise can't be eradicated by the circumstance, that the promise is even more anointed because of how far it has to go? Think about that. Nothing in your life right now may look like what God said, but isn't that always the case? In fact, usually when we get a vision, when we get really amped about something, our life starts to look nothing like it. Welcome to the fiery furnace. When you think about this, though, what we see versus what God said often can feel worlds apart. When you've committed to making God's vision your vision, you may need to close your eyes, put your head down, and get to work. But it truly is time to run. I don't know if you've noticed, but this year is different. Okay. The pace is different. The warfare is different. The challenges are different. It's different. It's going to require a different way of showing up. It's going to require spiritual maturity. It's going to require a different prayer life. It's going to require different renewing of your mind. It's going to require different speaking and acting and behaving. But it's truly time to run. It's time to let the wind hit your face, to let your tears fall away, and to unleash your faith, to run away from the insecurities and inadequacies that threaten to devour your destiny, because God will meet you right where you are. And sometimes we need to stop asking God to change our present and instead ask him to unshackle us from the need to stay where he's calling us to run our race. Okay? Run toward what God has prepared for you in this season. Imagine running with passion into the unknown. Can you picture the focus that it takes to stay on course? Can you feel the determination it takes to press forward and not give up? Can you sense the courage it takes to run into the wilderness still in recovery? This time, you're not running alone. You're not just running to run. You're running because there's a place God has prepared for you. And why wouldn't you run towards that? Who you are matters, and what you allow to take up space in your heart matters. Fear, insecurity, rejection, and abandonment may have lived there, but they cannot stay. Once you know they're present, you've got to decide to evict them. You've got a world to change, and you've got a you to become. And you were created to thrive everywhere God calls your feet to tread. And it's okay to run, but this time with God and without fear. It's time to step into your calling. You were born to bring light to the darkness, to spark a revolution of faith for this generation and the next. And when fear creeps in, when anxiety fights to find its way back, and when the hope of the promise feels distant, look up, because your help comes from the Lord. This is your moment. Are you ready to lock arms with us and receive your breakthroughs? If you have the courage to begin, you have the courage to succeed. Are you ready to collide with everything God has set aside for just you? Surrender your dreams, your plans, your hopes, and your desires. Position yourself to receive what He's about to release. Release the hope of what you thought you wanted and trust God to transform it into something greater. This shall be your best year yet. We are in Favor February. Wait on that prophetic word coming. And this is your last chance to join us in the God's Vibes Mastermind. Enrollment closes tonight at midnight. Special offer for the God's Vibes Mastermind listeners. Let's make this your year to step into your destiny. We do have a payment plan open and available now by request. If you have any questions at all, email info@julianapage.com. Today is the deadline, but we are ready to welcome you and walk with you in this life-changing journey. And I just want to encourage you, do not miss your breakthrough. I don't know if you've heard other people's testimonies of what's possible and how they're running now, but it's amazing. And you could absolutely be God's next success story. So come join us. You are invited, but you got to move fast. Pray on it, and then don't hesitate. Those that know their God shall be strong and do great exploits. We are all about building spiritual heavyweights, those that know their God, those that are strong in the Lord and the power of His might, and those that know that they are here on purpose, that they are advancing the kingdom, and they want to run with people that know that too. Okay, so if that resonates with you, if that speaks with you, click the link in the show notes. You can also sponsor somebody else's journey. Or if you have any questions at all about that, email info@julianapage.com. And I can't wait to see you and champion you inside the God's Vibes Mastermind. All right, everybody, I hope this message blessed you. And until next time, stay blessed. Listen, if you are not plugged into Courage Co yet, what are you doing? Courage Co is a faith-based community off social media that you can access from your phone or your desktop, literally from anywhere. It is a safe place and a sacred space for you to invest in and live your most courageous and impactful story. You can join us for free for prayer calls and challenges, for a monthly subscription where we have monthly masterclasses, or the God's Vibes Mastermind, where you will get live master life coaching at a price that you won't get anywhere else. 12 weeks of content that we will go through together, or you can navigate at your own pace. You'll have lifetime access to that. A community of women doing this alongside of you, a workbook, and so many other materials to help you on your journey. And I just want you to imagine for a second, having the courage, clarity, and focus to achieve anything you desire. Walking into any situation fully confident, knowing you have everything you need to succeed. Embracing challenges and overcoming obstacles with grace and ease. Feeling only love and compassion for others, no matter how they may have hurt you in the past. Standing up for what you believe in and taking unstoppable action to create the kind of world you want to live in. You're in the right place to take your next step on your journey. When you plug into the God's Vibes Mastermind, I'll teach you how to identify and eliminate the self-limiting beliefs and habits that are stopping you from getting the results you want. I'll teach you how to heal old wounds that have negatively impacted your self-image and self-esteem for far too long. I'll show you how to dismantle the story of who you are and what you can or cannot do in the world. I'll help you expand your consciousness from fear-based limitation to love and compassion and service to the world. I'll help you vanquish the inner enemies that are stopping you from being all that you can be. Release your victimhood and reclaim your power. Develop a aligned mindset and habits to boost your productivity and results. Gain deeper awareness of your own inner light and divinity, and achieve the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self-mastery needed to achieve any goal. You will learn how to think the way God formed, shaped, and anointed you to think, and succeed the way He always intended, and show up in any situation as the most powerful person in the room, no matter what challenges might appear on your path. If this sounds like something that you want to be a part of, I want to invite you to join the God's Vibes Mastermind. You can get plugged into it over at Courage Co. You can access Courage Co at any level at www.courageco.org. Together, we will awaken your inner warrior spirit and unleash your capacity to achieve any goal you can imagine. You will become an example of what's possible with God.